The organ played a low, drawn-out note that settled over the chapel like fog. I wasn't crying, but the skin under my eyes was raw. I kept pulling at the folded corner of the funeral program in my hand, creased, then smoothed, then creased again. Across the aisle, people I hadn't seen in years dabbed at their eyes and whispered behind tissues. And right in the middle row, with a front row view of my grief, sat my cousin Aiden. He hadn't looked at me once. That should have been my first clue. Not that something was off, because let's be real, nothing about that day felt on, but that something was deliberate. That the silence wasn't distance, it was choice. The funeral was for my Uncle Rick, my mom's younger brother. He was only in his 50s, a big guy with a laugh that could rattle windows. The kind of uncle who bought you ice cream even when you'd already had dinner and called you champ long after you stopped being a kid. He'd collapsed at home 3 weeks earlier. Stroke. No warning. Gone before the ambulance arrived. The family tried to rally. There were spreadsheets, group texts, some kind of chain of command forming around who would do what. My mother, older sister, and cousin Aiden became the default point people. I offered help, offered money, even offered to come in early to help prep the church basement for the wake. Aiden told me he had it under control. "Just show up," he said over the phone, his voice flat. "It'll mean a lot." So I did. I was there when the casket was wheeled in. I helped carry one of the flower arrangements to the altar. I shook hands with relatives from Florida who hadn't seen me since I was 12. I even stayed after, standing awkwardly by the coffee urn while people traded stories and tiptoed around the rawer bits of memory. I was there. But Aiden would later tell everyone I wasn't. It took 4 days for the fallout to reach me. I had flown back home the morning after the funeral, needed to return to work, a job that barely tolerated my time off as it was. I'd taken the red-eye, too tired to scroll, too numb to sleep, earbuds in with nothing playing. I was back in my apartment unpacking when I got a text from my Aunt Teresa. "I'm disappointed in you, Nate. Whatever issues you had with Rick should have been put aside. Family deserved better." I stood frozen in my kitchen, holding a half-folded shirt. I reread it twice before texting back. "I was there. I stood right behind you during the eulogy." Her response? "Aiden said you didn't come." I don't know how to explain the kind of confusion that turns into anger in slow, bitter stages. At first I thought maybe she misheard. Maybe Aiden said someone else wasn't there, and she misunderstood. But then another message came in. Then 2 more. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, messaging me in clipped, passive-aggressive tones. "Hope everything's okay. Heard you missed the service. Hard time for everyone. Don't think disappearing helped." And I started to feel it, that tightening in the chest, that weird kind of helpless rage where the facts feel like they're evaporating and you're left defending a ghost of yourself. I scrolled through my photos to find proof. I had one blurry shot from outside the church, taken from the sidewalk while I was waiting for the service to start. The black-suited crowd barely visible. I hadn't taken any others. It felt wrong. Funerals weren't for selfies. I didn't even think to text anyone while I was there. That was supposed to mean something. Being present. Apparently, it meant nothing. I called Aiden that night. He didn't pick up. I texted him. "I don't understand what's going on. Why are people saying I wasn't at the funeral?" 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Nothing else. I should explain something about Aiden. We grew up more like brothers than cousins. Same age, same schools, same summer trips to Grandma's lake house. He was the loud one, the talker, the future politician, as our uncles used to joke. I was the quieter one, always second in line, always catching up. It didn't matter. We had a rhythm. Or at least, I thought we did. Things shifted when we hit our 20s. Aiden got into law school. I took a sales job out of state. Then he got married. I didn't. We stayed in touch, but it got thinner, like fabric slowly fraying. We saw each other only at holidays or major events. Still, I never thought there was bad blood, which is why this felt so calculated. You don't just forget someone's presence at a funeral, especially when they're standing 5 feet from you, especially when they offer to carry flowers and help old Mrs. Donnelly to her seat and stand outside holding the church door open for your mother. You don't forget that, unless you want people to. I spent the next few days reaching out to others who'd been at the service. My cousin Rachel confirmed she'd seen me. She was kind, if awkward, over the phone. "Yeah, I remember you were there. I don't know why Aiden said you weren't. Maybe he just forgot?" Forgot? Uncle Rick had only 2 nephews, me and Aiden. We were the only ones who shared his last name. How do you forget that? I called my mom. She believed me instantly. She'd seen me from the front pew. We even hugged after the service. But somehow, that didn't matter. Aiden's version had already taken root, and no one wanted to be the one to say the golden son was wrong. A week later, my sister forwarded me a group chat screenshot. It was from one of the family threads I wasn't in. Aiden had written, "It's sad Nate didn't come. Uncle Rick always thought of him like a second son." No one corrected him, not even the ones who'd seen me. So I called him again. This time, he picked up. His voice was smooth, almost bored. "Hey, you told people I wasn't at the funeral," I said. There was a pause. Then, "Because you weren't." "What are you talking about? I was there, Aiden. I stood across the aisle from you. You nodded at me during the final prayer." "I think you're confused." My hands clenched so tight the phone creaked in my grip. Why would I lie about this? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Look, man, it's been a long week. Emotions are running high. Maybe just let it go." Let what go? My presence at my own uncle's funeral? It's not about that. Then what is it about? Another pause. Then he said, "I gotta run. We're having people over." And just like that, he hung up. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to piece it together. Why would someone lie like that? What did he gain by erasing me? And why, of all people, would my own cousin try to convince the rest of the family that I didn't even show up? I didn't know the full answer then, but I would find out. Because 3 weeks later, while visiting my mother, I found something in her drawer that changed everything. A will. Not Uncle Rick's. A draft, unsigned but typed and dated. And in it, Uncle Rick had named me, not Aiden, as his primary beneficiary. That's when I realized Aiden didn't forget I was there. He needed me to be gone. The paper was yellowing at the edges, folded once down the middle, tucked behind a pile of old phone bills and appliance warranties in my mother's drawer. If I hadn't been looking for batteries, I would never have found it. My mom still used a kitchen drawer as a catch-all: paper clips, measuring tape, envelopes with stamps from the early 2000s. But that draft stuck out immediately. Clean Times New Roman font. A header that read, "Preliminary Personal Will, D. Richard Whitaker." Uncle Rick's full name. I unfolded it slowly. The pages rustled like they knew they weren't supposed to be touched anymore. It was dated 4 months before his death, not notarized, no witness signature, but the language was all there, specific, unambiguous. "I, D. Richard Whitaker, being of sound mind and body, hereby state my intentions for the distribution of my estate." My name came up on the second page. To my nephew, Nathaniel Whitaker, I leave the primary residence and all possessions therein, with the understanding that he will maintain the property and uphold its history. My throat went dry. I read the line twice. Aiden's name wasn't there until page 3, and even then, it was vague. Something about sentimental items, a watch, a box of letters. But the bulk, house, savings, stocks, was meant for me. I stood in my mom's kitchen, holding that paper, and everything clicked into place like a slap. He didn't forget I was at the funeral. He wanted me erased, because if I wasn't part of the goodbye, maybe no one would believe I was ever part of the will. I asked my mother about it later that evening. She looked up from her tea and nodded slowly. "Rick gave it to me to read over," she said. "Said he wanted a second opinion before he took it to his lawyer." "Did he ever finalize it?" She hesitated. "I don't know. He said he was planning to. But then, well, you know." "No one's mentioned this," I said. Her eyes darted. I didn't think it was my place. "Mom, you saw what Aiden's doing." She didn't speak. She just sipped her tea again. Aiden was the executor of the estate. Of course he was. I found that out the same day by calling Rick's lawyer. Well, technically, leaving a message and getting a call back 48 hours later from a brusque woman named Deborah, who sounded like she'd been fielding family calls all week. "Are you contesting something?" she asked, not unkindly, but like she'd asked it too many times already. "I'm not even sure what's been filed." "There is a finalized will. It leaves the house to Aiden Whitaker. All bank assets to be split among siblings. A few items go to various cousins and friends. Is there something you expected to see?" I hesitated. He mentioned wanting to leave me the house. No mention of that in the signed version I've seen. "What about an earlier draft?" "We don't keep drafts, sir. Only the signed, notarized versions." Of course they didn't. And just like that, the paper in my hand became a ghost. Real to me, dismissible to everyone else. I confronted my mother again that night. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" She shook her head. "Rick was always changing his mind, Nate. One week he said you. Next week he was worried it would be too much responsibility. He worried you'd sell it, that you didn't have the time. I told him I'd take care of it." "I know. But you weren't around, sweetheart. Aiden was. At least, that's what Rick saw. That's how Aiden made it look." I sat down at the table across from her. The laminate surface had a little burn mark from a hot pot she'd put down 10 years ago. I stared at it like it could answer something for me. "Do you believe I was at the funeral?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Of course I do." "Then why is no one correcting him?" She sighed. "Because he's louder. And people believe loud." A week later, I made the drive to the house. Not to argue, not to yell, just to see it. Uncle Rick's place was a small 2-bedroom ranch outside the city. Brick with a fading blue shutter. The grass was already overgrown. Aiden's car was in the driveway, trunk open, a couple boxes shoved into the back seat. I didn't park. I just sat across the street and watched. At one point, he came outside carrying a photo album, one of those thick, old-school ones with plastic sleeves and gold writing on the cover. He didn't look around, just threw it into a bin and shut the lid. I stared at that bin for a long time after he went inside. A few minutes later, he came back out, locked the door, got in his car, and drove off. I walked over, lifted the lid. The photo album was still on top. I opened it. The first page was a picture of me and Aiden, maybe 10 years old, standing on a dock with Uncle Rick behind us holding up a tiny fish. We were both sunburned and grinning. I turned the page. Another photo. Christmas at Grandma's house, me in a red sweater too small for me, Aiden mid-laugh. Rick unwrapping a bottle of something. Another page. A 4th of July cookout. Aiden and I with sparklers. Rick flipping burgers in the background. I closed the album and sat down on the porch step with it in my lap. It hit me then. He wasn't just cutting me out of the will. He was cutting me out of memory. I kept the album. Petty, maybe. But I wasn't about to let the one person who could rewrite history also be the one to burn it. I debated what to do next. The will was signed. The house already transferred. I had no legal footing. That draft copy in my mom's drawer? Worthless unless I could prove Rick's intent to finalize it. But the lie about the funeral, that still itched at me. Not because it cost me money. Because it worked. People believed it. They swallowed it whole. And the more I tried to explain, the more defensive I sounded. It was like screaming underwater. Then one night, about 2 weeks later, I got a message from Rachel, our mutual cousin. "Hey, just saw Aiden's post. WTF?" I messaged back, "What post?" She sent a screenshot. It was from Facebook. Aiden had posted a photo of the church from the funeral. The caption read, "Saying goodbye without everyone there was hard. Some absences can't be explained, only felt. Uncle Rick deserved more." And there were comments, people tagging me, people assuming the worst. That's when I lost it. Not the kind of lost it where you scream or throw things, the kind where something cold and steady locks into place. I opened my laptop. I pulled up my cloud drive. I searched through old uploads, backups, shared folders I'd forgotten about. I remembered transferring photos there once from my phone, a backup sync I'd set up for automatic uploads, and there it was, a folder named Events. Inside, photos from the funeral, a blurry shot from outside the church, a photo from the reception in the basement, people gathered around a coffee table, my hand visible on the edge, next to a paper plate of cookies. And then, a video. I clicked. It was only 11 seconds. Taken by accident, probably when I meant to take a picture. But it showed the chapel, the casket, the pews, and, clear as day, Aiden walking past me. My face in the corner of the frame. Me nodding at someone. Aiden looking right at me. He saw me. And he lied anyway. That was all I needed. I emailed the video to myself, then to Rachel, then to Aunt Teresa. No caption, just the file. The first reply came within an hour. "Oh my God, I feel like an idiot. I'm so sorry." Then more, a slow domino of redemptions. But that wasn't the end, because someone forwarded it to Aiden, and he called me at 2 in the morning. At exactly 2:07 a.m., my phone lit up with a call from Aiden. No warning, no text first, just his name on the screen, glowing in that kind of pale light that makes everything feel like a dream you can't wake up from. I stared at it for a solid 10 seconds before letting it ring out. He didn't leave a voicemail at first. 3 minutes later, he called again. I rejected it this time, swiped it away like the panic it carried was contagious. Then came the voicemail, 42 seconds long. I waited. I sat there with my thumb hovering over the play button, my heart pacing like it had somewhere better to be. I needed to brace myself, because whatever Aiden had to say after being exposed like that, it wouldn't be casual. I pressed play. His voice was low, controlled. Too controlled. "Nate, look, I don't know what you're trying to do, but dragging this stuff up now, after everything, it's low, man. You think sending that video makes you a hero? It just makes you look petty. Everyone's grieving. Let it go. You're not going to change anything. The will's signed. The house is mine. You showing up for 11 seconds doesn't make you a martyr. So, whatever point you're trying to prove, just stop. For your own sake. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there in the dark, phone still warm in my hand, the silence after his words louder than anything he'd said. He wasn't denying the lie. He was just mad it didn't stick. The next morning, I woke up to chaos in the family group chats. Rachel had posted the video in one of the bigger ones, over 30 people in it. Most of them hadn't even said a word to me since the funeral. Now they were tagging me. Things like, "Just saw this, can't believe we all assumed the worst. Aiden, you told me yourself Nate wasn't there. Was there a reason you'd say that, Aiden?" For once, the silence wasn't mine. It was his. He didn't respond in the group chat, didn't call again, didn't text. But others did. Teresa called first. Apologized so many times I lost count. "I should have known better," she said, voice cracking. "Rick loved you. I should have asked you myself." Then my Uncle Mike. Then our cousin Jenna. Each one slowly unraveling the little web Aiden had spun. But the apology that stuck with me most came from someone unexpected. My Aunt Lorraine, Rick's older sister, the one who never liked me much, always said I reminded her of Rick's flaky side. She messaged me privately. "I'm sorry I doubted you. I was angry and looking for somewhere to put it. That wasn't fair." That one, for some reason, hit harder than the others. Maybe because it felt like more than just an apology. It felt like someone choosing to believe me this time. Choosing me. And still, Aiden said nothing. For 5 days he was silent. No posts, no responses, nothing. And then, on the 6th day, he posted a photo on Facebook. Him in front of Uncle Rick's house, holding a toolbox captioned, "Moving forward, one room at a time." No mention of the video, no mention of me. Just vibes. Fake, curated, infuriating vibes. It would have been easy to stop there. I'd cleared my name. The family now knew I was at the funeral, that I hadn't skipped out, that Aiden had lied. But the draft will still sat in my backpack, folded into a manila envelope, still ignored, still irrelevant, still powerless, until the email arrived. Subject line, "Follow-up, Estate Administration Concerns." From Deborah, Rick's lawyer. "Mr. Whitaker, I've reviewed the correspondence and attachments you sent. While our office does not retain draft documents, and the currently executed will stands as the only legal instrument on file, your recent evidence suggests a potential misrepresentation during the probate process. In light of the photo, video evidence, and the attached draft, we are obligated to inform you that you may have grounds to request a probate review or raise a formal contest, should you choose to pursue it. Please be advised, this is time-sensitive. Regards, Deborah L. Hadley, Esco." Time-sensitive. 2 words that changed everything. I stared at that email for hours before calling her. We spoke for 20 minutes. She explained things in terms I barely followed: contested wills, evidentiary burden, witness credibility. And then she asked, "Do you want to move forward?" I hesitated, because it wasn't just about the house. It was about whether I wanted to pull this entire thing into court, turn the grief of Rick's passing into depositions and paperwork and hearings, drag my family, what was left of it, into something cold and expensive and public. But then I remembered the look on Aiden's face in the video. That micro-expression, half smirk, half disregard, as he walked past me without acknowledgement. He saw me. He knew. He just didn't think anyone else ever would. "I want to move forward," I said. What followed was 6 weeks of legal paperwork. Deborah handled most of it, but I had to submit a sworn affidavit. I sent over the video, the draft will, even a few email chains between me and Rick from last year, where he mentioned the house, wanting to keep it in the family, and make sure it goes to someone who'll remember the garage doesn't lock unless you lift the handle first. Deborah built a case. Quiet, methodical. And then Aiden broke his silence. He filed a motion to block. I found out the same day my mom got a call from someone in the neighborhood, Mrs. Landry, who used to babysit us both when we were kids. Aiden was yelling outside the garage today, she said. Slammed the bin lid so loud I thought something was wrong. Then he just drove off. Fast. I pictured the garage, the one with the sticky lock, the one Rick had wanted me to have, and I realized something else. Aiden was scared, not of me, but of proof. Because for once, the story wasn't his to tell. The court date was set. Probate hearing. Small room. Few attendees. Just me, Aiden, 2 lawyers, and a judge with reading glasses who looked like he'd rather be golfing. I didn't look at Aiden when I walked in. Didn't acknowledge him at all. He tried, though. Tried to catch my eye, maybe offer some performative shrug, some silent, "This is stupid, right?" gesture. I didn't bite. We sat on opposite ends of the room, 2 sides of a history we both knew, but only one of us had weaponized. Deborah presented everything: chronology, documents, video. She was calm, confident. Let the facts speak for themselves. Aiden's lawyer, some guy with too much hair gel and too little conscience, argued that the draft meant nothing, that Rick had every opportunity to sign it and didn't, that the current will was final, binding, and legitimate. But then Deborah said, "We're not disputing the legality. We're challenging the legitimacy of the process because of deliberate misrepresentation by the executor." The judge raised an eyebrow. Misrepresentation in what way? Deborah hit play on the video. The 11 seconds that changed everything. Then she read Aiden's public posts, the messages from family, the voicemail transcript, and she said, "This wasn't a mistake. This was a campaign." The judge didn't rule that day. He said he'd issue a statement within 10 days. Aiden and I walked out in silence, but as I passed him, he muttered, "You really think this makes you the better man?" I stopped, looked him square in the eyes, and said, "No, but it makes me the honest one." Then I walked away. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday. Plain white, no markings. Just my name and address typed in a serif font that looked like it belonged on a tax form. For a second, I thought it was junk mail. But when I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out the single-page letter inside, I knew. It was the ruling. The judge's statement, typed, signed, and sealed. My hands trembled slightly as I held it. Not because I feared the contents. I already knew, deep down, what the outcome would be. It was the fact that someone had finally said it out loud. Based on the evidence submitted, this court finds that while the executed will of D. Richard Whitaker remains legally binding, credible and persuasive testimony demonstrates that executor Aiden Whitaker acted with intentional misrepresentation and omitted material truths during probate. This court orders an official amendment to the administrative record to reflect that Nathaniel Whitaker was, in fact, present at the funeral proceedings in question, and directs a supplemental review of potential fiduciary misconduct. It wasn't a reversal. It wasn't a handover of the house, but it was something. It was truth. I called Deborah to clarify what it meant. "The will still stands?" I asked. She confirmed. "For now, we can pursue further action, but it'll require depositions and a longer process. Aiden's claim to the house is still intact unless we prove fraud in the drafting itself, not just the aftermath." I sighed. She added, "But Nate, we changed the record. That matters. Courts don't often do that without cause." And maybe that's what it came down to in the end. The record. My name restored, my presence acknowledged. Aiden hadn't expected me to fight. He'd counted on my silence, on me being too embarrassed, too unsure, too distant to push back. But I had, quietly, persistently, without the drama he thrived in. The next time I saw him was 2 weeks later. I wasn't planning to. I was just driving past Uncle Rick's old place when I saw the for sale sign hammered into the front lawn. My stomach turned. Not from surprise, I knew it would happen eventually, but from anger. Aiden hadn't even tried to live there, just emptied it out and listed it, like it was a garage sale. Like the house that held 30 years of memories meant nothing more than a price tag. I pulled over. The porch steps creaked under my weight. A flash of memory hit. Uncle Rick sitting right there, a beer in one hand, a bowl of pretzels in the other, telling me that the trick to grilling wasn't heat, it was patience. I knocked. No answer. But the door opened anyway. Aiden stood there in a wrinkled polo shirt, phone in hand, Bluetooth in his ear like he'd just walked out of a conference call. He looked at me, not shocked, but tired. "What do you want?" he said. "Just saw the sign." He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Yeah, well, it's too much to keep up with. Doesn't make sense to hold on to it." "Never planned to, did you?" He didn't answer. Rick wanted me to have it. "No, he thought he did," Aiden snapped. "But he didn't sign that draft. He didn't follow through. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe he didn't trust you to actually take care of it. You think showing up with one video proves you were some golden heir." I took a breath. "You lied, Aiden. That's what matters." "I protected the estate." "You protected yourself." We stood there, staring each other down, the silence heavy with things we'd never said over the years. Then he scoffed, low and bitter. "You always did think being quiet made you better than everyone." "No," I said. "I just thought it meant I didn't have to lie." He clenched his jaw, but said nothing. That was the last time I spoke to him. He sold the house a month later. Didn't tell anyone. I found out from Rachel, who forwarded me the Zillow link. Photos showed it gutted, staged, repainted, like Rick had never lived there, like we'd never grilled in that backyard, played cards at that kitchen table, argued over whether Die Hard was a Christmas movie in that basement den. But something else showed up in those photos too. The old bookshelf in the back office, still there, still holding the same faded copy of Catcher in the Rye Rick used to reread every summer. A relic that slipped through Aiden's cleanout. A reminder that not everything could be erased. A month after the sale, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a cardboard box about the size of a shoebox, taped shut with the kind of clear Scotch tape that yellowed at the edges. Inside were 3 things: a watch, gold-plated, scuffed, with a small engraving on the inside that read, RW. A handwritten note from Rick. "Give this to Nate if I don't get around to it. He'll know why." A Polaroid photo of the 3 of us, me, Rick, and Aiden, on that dock with the tiny fish. On the back, Rick had written, "Best summer ever, 99. No explanation, no apology, no sender. But I knew. Some part of Aiden must have found it, packed it, sent it, not as a peace offering, not really, but maybe as a reluctant acknowledgement that some things couldn't be buried under lies, that I couldn't. It's been 6 months since the court ruling. I'm still living in the same apartment, still working the same job, but things feel different, clearer. I've spoken to more of my family in the last few months than I had in years. People checking in, asking how I'm doing, remembering birthdays again. I'm not the ghost Aiden tried to make me. And when Uncle Rick's birthday came around this year, I visited his grave. Alone. I stood there in the fading light with that watch in my pocket and the photo tucked into my jacket. And I said, "I was there, Rick. I stood right there." Then I whispered the part that mattered more, and now they know it too. It rained the day I went back. Not a heavy rain, just that slow, steady kind that soaks through your collar and makes the whole world smell like wet grass and stone. I didn't bring an umbrella, didn't bring flowers either. I just brought the box. The same one Aiden had sent anonymously months ago, though we both knew he'd packed it himself. Inside was Rick's watch, the Polaroid, the note. I'd kept them in my apartment, untouched since the day they arrived. But something about this morning, maybe the way the clouds hung low, or the fact that the date on my phone matched Rick's birthday, told me it was time to bring them somewhere real. So I went to the cemetery. Row D, Plot 18. I didn't need directions anymore. There was no one else around. The grass had grown a little too high near the base of the stone, and the name etched there was already starting to gather dirt and moss. Rick would have laughed at that, called it fancy neglect. I knelt down, opened the box, placed the photo at the base of the marker, then the note, then the watch. Not to leave them there, but to let them sit, for just a minute, where they belonged, with him. I thought back to everything that had happened since he died. The funeral, the lies, the way Aiden had weaponized silence, the way the truth had clawed its way out anyway, like it refused to stay buried. And I thought about how close I'd come to letting it go, to letting him get away with it. Not just the lie, but the slow erasure of me from everything Rick and I shared. Aiden had money now. The house was gone. The sale was public record. He'd made his profit and moved on. New condo, new girlfriend, new life. But he'd also left something behind. And it wasn't in the will. It was in the silence that followed him. Family hears things. The truth got around. The fact that I'd been at the funeral, confirmed. That Aiden lied, confirmed. That he tried to erase me from Rick's story, indisputable. And though no one staged a dramatic intervention or wrote public call-outs, the shift happened anyway. He stopped getting invited to things, stopped being copied on family emails, stopped being the golden boy. At first, I thought it was pity. People trying to swing the pendulum too far back the other way to make up for doubting me. But it wasn't that. It was respect. A quiet acknowledgement that I'd stood up not just for myself, but for Rick, for his memory, for what it meant to show up, even when no one saw you at first. After a while, I stood up, wiped the mud from my knees, put the watch back in the box, the note too, but not the photo. That I left. It didn't need a frame. It didn't need a caption. Just 3 boys on a dock, a tiny fish, and the summer that still lives in the corners of who I am. I walked back to the car slowly, rain still falling, but something lighter in my chest now, something settled. Aiden had taken the house, sure, but he hadn't taken what mattered. He hadn't taken the truth. He hadn't taken me. Later that night, I got a text from Rachel. "Dinner at Mom's this Sunday. You coming?" I stared at it for a second, let myself smile. "Yeah," I typed. "I'll be there." Because this time, no one would question it. No one would pretend otherwise. I wasn't invisible anymore, and I never would be again. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.